What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Kilo Loco, and today we're going to be working with Flutter. So today's day 4 of hashtag 30 days of Flutter, and once again, got another video for you guys. We're going to be working on another little app today. So today's lesson is going to be showing you how to build a flashcards app, and we're going to actually be working with a lot of new things in here. We're going to be working with how to work with objects, so you're going to be building your very first class. We're going to be bringing in a third-party dependency so that we can show our card, and then we're also going to be working with a separate file so that we can have a stateless widget that we can render and actually make, our code a little bit sexier, because we don't want to keep reusing our code, right? So that's all we're going to be covering today. And the flashcards app is just going to be able to show you some text on one side. You're going to flip it over, you're going to see the answer on the other, and then you can go to the next card, and then you can pretty much learn that way. So hopefully it's going to be helpful for some of you that are still in school, studying for different things. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. And as you can see, we're just starting off with our basic layout, right? Just a basic template. We don't have anything to show in our app right now. And let's think about what we want to do. We want to have a card in the center of the screen, and that card is going to be displaying some text. We're also going to have a couple of buttons that are going to allow us to go to the previous card and go to the next card. So that means that we're going to need to have a column, right? We need to show our card in a column because we need to have the card up top, the buttons on the bottom. We're going to be working with a row to keep those buttons aligned, horizontally, the previous button and the next button. And then we also want the entire thing to be in the center. So at this point, we should feel comfortable working with all of those different widgets. We've implemented them in the past. If you didn't go through those videos, make sure you go back and check those videos out. Now let's go ahead and start building out some UI. All right, so here we go, a whole block of code, but up to this point, we've dealt with almost every widget that I have listed out here. But just in case, I'm still gonna go through it. So as you can see, inside of our scaffold for our body, we have a center. So we're just going to make sure that our next widget, our child, our column is going to be in the center of the screen that's going up and down, right? Then we want to make sure that we have the main axis alignment. Remember that the main axis alignment is going to go in whatever direction the widget is going. So columns go up and down, so it's going to be in the center of that column. And then inside of that column, we have a couple of children. We have this sized box, which is going to simply be of size 250 by 250. And we're going to have a card that is going to have a text, which is going to be in the center of that card. We have a row, and inside of that row, we have a new widget that we haven't worked with before, but it's just a button. It's an outline button, and we're going to initialize this with the icon constructor. Now, the icon constructor allows us to pass in an icon to represent it, obviously for its icon, and then we obviously have the onPressed method available to us, and then it also takes in a label. So we're going to show the previous, and on this outline button, we're going to show next, and the icon's going to be chevron to the right. So hopefully that wasn't too complicated. If you were able to understand everything that just was explained right now, then you're on a pretty good path with Flutter. So let's go ahead and run this, and let's see what our UI looks like. All right, and there you go. So as you can see, our layout for our UI is pretty good. We do need to fix a couple of things, but if you were able to kind of start visualizing some of this stuff in your head on what's going on, then hats off to you. So we can see that our card is right here. We might want to raise the elevation. That's going to give us a bigger shadow behind it. And then also we have our previous button and our next button like this, but it doesn't really look right because we want to have some space around it, right? We want to have the buttons like not be like all the way to the left, and then, they should be kind of centered a little bit. So the two things that we're going to fix are the card and this the spacing. So first let's focus on the card, and the way that we can fix that is by going to the card, and it has an argument that it takes in for elevation, and we could just simply set elevation to something like, I don't know, like 4. Maybe that'll be a little bit better. And if we save it, we can see that it gives us a little bit of a nicer effect on our card. Looking good so far. Now on the row, what we want to do is we want to change the main axis alignment. Remember, main axis, whatever direction it goes, rows go horizontal. That means that it's going to change how it behaves going from left to right. So we enter in the main axis alignment, and the one that we want is main axis alignment with space around. So that's going to put space around each of the elements inside, or each of the children inside of the row. So if we choose this one and then we save it, we can see that it gives us a really nicely spaced buttons like this. So it's looking way better so far. Now that we have that done, what we need to do is we need to focus on making sure that this card can flip back and forth, right? When we click on it, it should be able to flip. And then when we click on it again, it should be able to flip back. That's the part that we're actually going to be using a third-party dependency for, just so that life is easier, right? Make life easier when you can. So we're going to open up our browser, and we're going to go over to pub.dev. And pub.dev is a place where you can pick up Dart and Flutter packages that are essentially, code that's built by other developers that make it so that you don't really have to write that code. You can just borrow their code, use it for free, and it makes your app just work a lot nicer and less code that you have to write, right? So what we want to look for is a package called Flipcard. So if we go ahead and enter that in, it's going to be this first one right up here at the top. And if we go ahead and tap on it, it's going to actually have some of the information about this package. So as you can see, this one actually comes with a demonstration of what it looks like in action. So they show you that it can flip back and forth, and you can change which direction it's flipping in, which is really cool. And then there's also like an example. We're going to be looking at that a little bit later. And then it also tells you how to install this. So if we go up to the installing tab and we go over to the dependencies, all we need to do is just copy this line of code right here. So we copy that, we head back over to our project, we go to this pubspec.yaml file, and then what we want to do is we want to put that line of code under the dependencies. Now, make sure that you have the indentation correct. You want to make sure that it's at this Flutter level. You don't want it to be at this SDK level. So when you do enter on that on this SDK right here and you paste it in, it's going to be at the wrong level. So what you can do is you can do command and then the left square brace, and that will push it back to the left. And then all we need to do is simply save. If we do command S to save, you're going to see that that VS Code is going to go out there, get the package, and we'll be ready to go, and we'll be able to use all the code that was implemented by this package, which is really cool. So let's head back over to our main.dart, and what we want to do is we actually want to replace this card with a flip card. So if you scroll down and it shows you in the how to use area, every repo or every package is different. Not everything's going to look exactly like this one, but this one's really well documented. And it's going to show you how to actually use this thing. So you can see you just simply use a new widget called Flipcard, and then you have to specify what the front widget is going to be and what the back widget is going to be. And then you'll be good. And we actually don't even need to pass in this direction, because as you can see, it's just telling you that by default, it's going to flip horizontally. So let's go ahead and add in a flip card by replacing this card with that flip card. So we'll go to refactor, and we're going to wrap in a widget, and then we'll just pass in flip card. Now, keep in mind that we want to make sure that it's imported. So I did that. I clicked the top one, and what it did was all the way at the top, it made sure to import this line of code for me. If you don't have this line of code imported, you're going to have red squigglies, and we hate red squigglies. It's like you spelled something wrong, but you didn't spell anything wrong. You just need to make sure that you got this one imported. So, see, red squigglies, we don't like that. Now we have red squigglies right here because if we take a look at how this is implemented, it doesn't have an argument called child. It has an argument called front, and it has an argument called back. So we need to update our argument to say front, right? And if we go ahead and save that, well, we're looking a lot better, but we now have yellow squigglies, which is just as bad. Well, maybe not just as bad, but it's still it's not good. Anyways, what it's saying here is that we need to make sure that we implement the back as well. So for our flip card, what we want to do is we want to pass in another argument aside from the front, which is the back down here. So we'll have the back and the widget that we're going to pass in. We can just do the same card. We could just copy all that. And we could paste it in there. We'll press save. It'll refactor everything. And let's go ahead and say, welcome to the backside, Luke. All right. So as you can see, now we have these two widgets, right? We have one for the front, we have one for the back, and they're both cards. They both have almost all the same values. The only thing that's different is the text. We're going to talk about that in a second, but let's go ahead, stop our app, and we're going to rerun it again. All right, and there we go. So we don't notice anything different visually at this point, but if we go ahead and tap on this card, you can see that it flips. Like, isn't that like, ooh, that's like, ooh. So yeah, we have our little beautiful animation in there. Look at that. Whoo! Now that's a sexy flashcard. So we have our animation in there, and we have two different sides, right? So we have one side, we have like the sexy flashcard, and then on the back side, we have this one as well. So I wanted to address the fact that we had copied some code, this card code right here, right? And we just reused it. And the only difference between those two copies is just this text in here. So when you start to copy things, that's a sign of a code smell. And a code smell means that well, first of all, your code stank, but it means that you're repeating yourself, and you don't want to do that. You want to try to make it so that you can write it once and then use it in other places. Because what would happen if I wanted to change this all the way up to 10, right? The back card should be all the way up to 10. The elevation is just going to be super big. You see how this shadow's way big? But if I flip it over, it's a lot smaller. So different sizes in shadow. Well, then I would have to go right here and I'd have to change this to 10 as well, right? Just so that everything matches. I'm going to undo that because it looks nasty, but that's the entire point of, you know, refactoring code and putting it in one place and reusing the refactored code, is because if you need to make that change, then you can only, you don't have to do it in multiple places. You could just do it in one place. Because if this code was copied throughout our app and we had 30 screens that use this card for whatever reason, then we would have to go to 30 different screens and make that change. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to create a new file, and we're going to actually create a flashcard view. So let's create a new file and we'll call it flashcard view. Now, when you create a new file for Dart, everything has to be lowercase, and you can't have spaces or dashes. You need to use underscores. So I'm going to call mine flashcard view .dart. Make sure you got that .dart. So now what we can do is we need to first import material, which is what we use for pretty much all of Flutter. And then we can create a new class that's going to be called flashcard view. All right, so we have our flashcard view class, right? And it extends stateless widget. Now, we've been working with stateful widgets up until now, and that's because we needed to like keep track of like what the state is of our view, right? Did the user enter in something? Did we hit a button? What current index are we at? Things like that. We use stateless widget when we're not keeping track of any of that, and we're simply displaying information. And based off of the information that's passed into this widget, we can have logic that makes it display something different. So when we're working with the stateless widget, we're not going to create state in this class. We're going to actually go straight to the build. So just kind of referencing what we've done so far, we have my app, right? We have a stateful widget, and that creates state. But when you're working with a stateless widget, you don't have this my app state or some other object that extends state that would implement the build method. Your stateless widget will implement this build method. So just wanted to point that out for you. So let's go ahead and implement the build method. All right, and there we go. So we get autocomplete just like we did before with my app, And what we want to do now is we want to copy the code that we copied before for our cards, right? And we want to copy that and paste it here. So we'll go back over to main and we're going to copy that code, the card code, and we'll go back to flashcard view, and then we're going to return that. So we're going to return that card. Now, right now, this is going to only work. This is only going to show welcome to backside Luke, right? But we know that we need to pass in different values, different text or different string values to this widget. So we need to fix our constructor. So what we'll do is first we're going to implement the property that's going to hang on to whatever the text is going to be displayed in here. We'll call that text. It'll be of type string. And then we're going to create a constructor that allows us to pass a value into a new flashcard view. So let's do that now. And there we go. So as you can see, we have a text property which is of type string, and we're marking it with final just because it can't change. It's a constant value, not like a literal constant, but it's just like you can't change this value, so we're not expecting for it to change. And then we're creating our constructor by saying that it does take in a key. All widgets take in a key. It's what helps Flutter identify what widget needs to be rebuilt and things like that. We can touch on that a later day. And then we're also specifying that we take in text. So when we have our constructor wrapped in curly braces like this, it's saying that we need to have things in a specific order, and we can use this.text or whatever property name that you give it to like create that constructor. So it'll have a named argument. So when we do flashcard, when we're trying to create it, it's going to be able to say text, and then we're going to be able to pass in some type of string right there. And then you need to make sure that you go over the super function, which is essentially going to say that we're overriding the default constructor of the flashcard view, but we're still passing in the key. So we want to make sure that we keep that consistency or that functionality in place. We don't want the key to go away and Flutter to like get confused about what's going on. Anyways, now what we can do is we can go down here to this text widget, and we can replace this string with the text that's passed in to our flashcard view. We go back over to our main.dart, and now what we can do is we can take this string. I'll cut it out of here, and I'm going to go ahead and replace the back of this card with our newly created flashcard view. So flashcard view. Now, as you can see, once again, it's going to auto import for me because we have that code in a different file and it needs to be imported into this file. So when I hit enter, we're going to go back up to the top. We're going to see that flashcard view was imported for us. So just keep that in mind. And right here, we should be good. So we have our flashcard view. We need to pass in some type of text like this, and we can paste in our string as it was. We can also replace this one with the flashcard view as well. So now if I cut it and I replace this card, the front, with a flashcard view like that, and then the text, and then we paste that string in there and we save it, we're going to notice that we don't really get anything different happening. But if I were to go over to my flashcard view and then I were to do something like change the elevation to, let's say 20, just so that it's really dramatic, we can see that it really takes an effect right here and right there. We can see the changes. Now, this caused some type of problem. It's not a big deal, but we're just going to change it back to 4 just so that we can see that everything is back to normal. But yeah, now every time that we want to make a change to our flashcard view, it will affect all of the flashcard views. All right, so now that we have our UI pretty much all done, we need to start working on the data for our app, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a new object, and that new object is gonna be called flashcard. Now you can call this whatever you want. You can call it like a quiz question or some type of topic, or you could call it whatever you want, but we are going to be working with this object to populate these flashcard views. So I'm going to call mine flashcard. So what we'll do is we'll create another file. So I'm going to right click on lib, new file, and we'll call it flashcard. All right, so we have flashcard.dart. And what we're going to do is it's going to be a very simple class. We'll call it flashcard. And our flashcard is going to take in it's going to have two different properties on it. It's going to have the question and it's going to have the answer. So let's go ahead and add those strings in now. So as we can see, we have the two properties, question and answer. And we have the red squigglies, which we're like, no. And what we need to do is we need to fix that by adding in a constructor. So let's add that now. All right, and that's all we need to do. There's no need to add a key in here because this is not a widget. It's just a class. It's just built for holding data. It's not built for holding UI. And we don't have anything to do our super override because we're not overriding anything in this class. We are simply creating a brand new class. So it's just as simple as this to hold data. Now that we have this flashcard class, let's go back over to our main.dart, and at the top of our state object, let's create a list of our flashcard objects. All right, and there we go. So in our my app state, we have a list of flashcards. Now remember, make sure that that import statement is at the top for this new object. It auto-completed and imported it for me. And then we have the name of our list, which is going to be called flashcards. And we have this object, our flashcard object, which the question is, what programming language does Flutter use? It's Dart. Another flashcard object, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. And then another flashcard object, who teaches you to write sexy code? Your boy Kilo Loco, that's right. All right, so now we have these flashcard objects, right? But we need to also keep track of what the current index is for our card. So we'll also create a current index property. We've done this before, and we'll set it equal to 0. All right, so then when we use this current index, we can just use it on our flashcards, and it's going to start off with the very first flashcard, right, which is going to be this one. So now we just need to implement that into our view, into our flashcard views, right? So instead of text right here being hard-coded for our front, we're going to want to implement the question of that flashcard object, right? So we'll do flashcards, then we'll pass in the current index. So that's going to give us a flashcard object, and on that object we want to display the question. Pretty similar thing that we're going to do for the back side of the card. We're going to do flashcards, current index, and then we want to show the answer on the back, right? So if we go ahead and let's run the app, we should be able to see our code update. So as you can see, it's already showing Dart. That's because we're already displaying the back, but on the front it says, what programming language does Flutter use? And we're saying Dart. Awesome. Now I don't like this text. Look at that. Look at it, it's all off to the left. So we have a problem, right? I want to make sure that my text is centered at least. You know, it doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, we probably shouldn't go to the edge either, but we definitely need this text to be centered. Like, why is it all the way to the left? That's nasty. So once again, just go over to our flashcard view, and under text, we can just go ahead and add in our text align, and we'll say text align, and we'll say center like that. So we save it, and boom, much better. Looking so much cleaner. I love it. All right, so that's why we write sexy code, because it makes life a whole lot easier. Okay, we're almost done. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to go next or to the previous card. So back over in our main.dart, we need to implement the functionality for these outline buttons, the on-press methods. So we're going to have two of them. We're going to have show next card and show previous card. So let's add those at the bottom of our file. All right, so we have our two functions right here. They're not implemented yet, but we can just update our code to show that it is going to work. All right, so show next card. Remember, we have matching function signatures, so we're not going to have any problem just passing these in as arguments without the parentheses like that, and that will trigger whatever code is in here. So let's start with show next card. What we want to do is we want to go to the next one. So we need to update our current index, but keep in mind that eventually we'll get to the end of the list of what we're displaying, right? So we're going to start off at 0. We're going to increment, we'll go to 1. We're going to increment again, we'll go to 2. If we increment again, we'll go to 3. We don't have a 3 index in our flashcards. It's just these 3, right? So 0, 1, 2. If we do 3, if we increment and it goes to 3, we're going to crash our app. Bad experience. So what we're going to do is we need to make sure that if we're less than the length of our list, then we're going to simply increment. But if we are at, or if we're equal to the length of our list, if we're at 3, then what we want to do is we actually want to change that current index back to 0. So let's go ahead and write that code out now. All right, so here we go. We have our current index we're going to be updating, right? So we're saying current index is equal to whatever this statement says. We're going to get our current index. If that current index is less than the flashcard's length, then we're going to run this code, the one that's right behind the question mark. If this statement is false, then we're going to run this code, which is just 0. So we're saying current index is equal to either this, if that statement is true, or this if the statement is false. This is called ternary operations. It lets you do a if-else statement in one line of code, which is really nice. It's on 2 lines, but it's like technically one line of code. So what we'll do is now, and we're also making sure that we wrap this in set state, right? Because we are updating the state. Let's go ahead and run the app or reload the app, and let's see if we can get it to show the next card. So now, what programming language does Flutter use? Dart. Okay, next. And it doesn't look like it's working. All right, so I reloaded the app, and let's go ahead and try to do next, and it didn't work again. So let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on. We'll scroll back up, show next card, and okay, so we can see that show next card is actually under the previous icon, and we need to fix that. So what I actually meant to do, you did it right? You knew. You were like, Kyle, you're so dumb, man. You trying to teach people stuff, you don't even know what you're doing. And I'm like, you right? All right, so now we have our functions updated. So if we hit next, we can see that it goes to the next one. So who are you gonna call? Bam, Ghostbusters. And then next, who teaches you how to write sexy code? You already know, your boy Kilo Loco. All right, now the real test is right here. What happens if we press next again? Crash. So it does look like our index is out of range, and what we want to do is we want to fix that. So let's check our logic again. If this is less than the current length, then we're going to execute this code. Well, that's not actually right. What we want to do is we want to say if current index plus 1 is less than this length, right? Because we're going to be updating it. So that was my fault again. So let's go ahead and do a hot restart and try this again. So now we do next, we do next, we do next, and bam, we went in a circle. Awesome. So look at, now we can go in a circle as many times as we want. We can go through all of our cards. So I make mistakes too. It happens. You just have to go back and debug your code. So once again, and I'll actually wrap this in, parentheses just so that you can kind of see it a little bit easier. We're going to focus on what's going on in here. If this is true, is it true? It's like asking a question, is it true? Then we're going to do this, right? Current index plus 1 is equal to that. So, but if it's false, then we're going to say current index is equal to that. All right. So let's go ahead and do the essentially the same thing for show previous card, and we'll write out that code now. All right, so here we go again. In our show previous cards function, we are going to once again set state. We're changing the state, and we're going to say the current index is going to be equal to this statement right here, or it's going to be equal to one of these arguments. Is either if it's true, then this; if it's false, then this. So what it's saying is the current index -1 greater than or equal to 0? And we're doing that because we obviously have a 0 index, right? It's okay to be 0 index, but it can't be a -1 index, or else we're going to crash the app again. There is no -1 index. So if that's true, then we're just simply going to decrement the current index. But if it's false and we are about to hit -1, then what we want to do is we want to go to the top of the array, or the last element of the list, right? So we'll do flashcards.length. So we have 3 in there, right? But we don't have a 3 index, so we have to do -1, so that we're going to say the 2 index. So if we go ahead and do a hot restart on that, we can see that we can go forward. What programming language do you use? All right, who are you going to call? We can go backwards. What programming language do you use? And then if we do previous again, it should go all the way to the last element in our list, which is who teaches you how to write sexy code. You already know. You already know. And that's pretty much it. I hope that you enjoyed this lesson. I hope you found it very informative. I wanted to, start introducing you to some of the more complex concepts, like creating your own objects, creating your own views, just all those different things, right? We wrote some really sexy code in this tutorial, I think. And, this is just going to be the first steps of you really starting to get a grasp on like object-oriented programming and working with state and working with third-party dependencies and things like that. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. I hope you're doing great on your 30 days of Flutter. And if you have any other topics that you want to see, any other mini apps that you want to build out, make sure you leave them in the comments down below. And I'll try to implement them or show you how to implement them if they're simple enough to teach in one of these lessons. So that's going to be it. Thanks again for your time. Now go out there and keep coding passionately.